door whilst they tried to take as much money as possible away.
In fear of his family's lives, Colin opened the vault. Inside were more than £200 million in banknotes. For the next hour, the robbers went backwards and forwards, filling their lorry with money. Using cages, holdalls, and even a shopping trolley.
I was laying there trying to work out, okay, where do we go from here, but also, you know, how much was being taken, how long it was going to take before they actually had enough and would go and leave us. Wishing the time away, I suppose, wishing the time would go quickly.
Well, then you start thinking, well, the longer it goes on, the more you start thinking, oh, what are they going to do here? You know, are we going home at the end of the night? You know, they've been here an awful long time. You know, standing here with a gun on everybody. You know, what are they going to do when they finish? You know, are they going to be happy just to leave us here? You know, or not?
Hurry up! Come on, guys, get it in. Hurry up!
Michael, a man in his 60s with a history of coronary problems, worried he would have a heart attack.
We're trying to keep calm and try to not show any outwardly, you know, sort of emotion or anything like that. But it's just welling up inside. And there was a period there for a period of time where I could literally feel myself shaking. At all times we were aware that they could shoot us. And that was probably the main reasons why we did what we had to do to survive. It's a survival instinct that kicks in, that overtakes most of your other all of your other emotions. The only one that is constantly there all the time, for me, was fear.
The robbers had filled the lorry with £53 million in new and used banknotes, but they had to leave behind £154 million. With the money now in the vehicle, what to do about the hostages?
I hoped that they weren't going to kill us. I hoped that all they wanted was the money. Yes, I was scared that that was an alternative, but I tried to put that part to the back of my mind because I didn't want it to happen.
One of the robbers decided to lock the staff in the metal cages normally used to store the money.
So I had to show them how to get out of the building, and then immediately after that I was put in one of the metal cages and locked in as well. As they were leaving, they wheeled around the corner in the building, another metal cage, trolley, and in there I could see my family.
Once we left in the cages, and then they left. The last thing they said to us as they left was, "Thank you for your cooperation," but they said it in a really sarcastic manner. And then they left. We all just sat there in the cages, not knowing whether they had actually left. Didn't speak or anything until somebody started kicking at his cage, and nobody came back in. So once we realised, yep, they've actually gone, then everybody started kicking at their cages.
One member of staff had a key to unlock the cage she was locked in. She was then able to help free the others. Alan Thomas called the police.
When I dialed 999, the woman, you know, she said, you know, what service do you want? I said, police. And she said, what's happened? I said, well, my work's just been robbed. She said, do you know how much has been taken? And I went, millions. And I bet she thought, yeah, you know, because obviously she had no idea of, you know, what we were doing. But then one police car turned up, and it was a great sense of relief when you realised that they were genuine policemen. And they came in, and they just had one look around. And I always remember one of them looked at the other one and said, it was a policeman and a policewoman, and one of them looked at the other one and said, they're going to have to get everybody out of bed for this.
Come on!
The gang had disappeared with £53 million. It seemed like the perfect crime, but within hours their carefully laid plans were about to unravel. A gang of armed robbers had pulled off the biggest robbery in British history. They were on the run with £53 million in cash.
We know for a fact that this is organised crime at its top level. This is planned and executed with military precision. These people have terrorised 14 members of staff. These are callous criminals, they're professional criminals, they're an organised gang. We will catch these people. We've got the skills, determination and the resource to do it.
Charged with leading the investigation was this man, Detective Chief Inspector Mick Judge.
This is something that was unprecedented. We're very well trained to deal with robberies and to deal with homicide and kidnap, but we've never had anything of this scale, and it brought challenges to us that we'd not faced, and so it was new to a lot of us, simply because, as I say, the scale of it and the national interest.
Behind the scenes, Mick had set up an incident room and drafted in 300 officers to work on the investigation. It would become known as Operation Deliver.
Often in those first 24 hours, it's our golden period of making sure these are some of our best clues. Not just forensically, but, you know, we've got a lot of money here and it's going to be moved, it's going to be moved on and distributed.
The day after the robbery, at a packed press conference, police announced a massive reward for information about the heist.
Someone around the edge of this will know directly who's committed this, but may not have done the actual crime themselves. Those people are the people who may be able to earn a reward of up to £2 million.
What the press didn't know was that same afternoon, police were about to make their first breakthrough. The robbers who kidnapped Colin Dixon and his family had pretended to be police officers, and he had seen their faces. Why would they take such a risk by revealing their identity?
And this is a very high-risk thing to do. You risk identification at a later date. So they had to be wearing some form of disguise. And we did actually consider whether they may have had some makeup on. There was a bit of scorn originally about that from some people, saying it was a bit like Mission Impossible, the film. And then someone quite rightly pointed out so was stealing £53 million.
Just 24 hours after the robbery, detectives raided this house in South London. They'd been given a tip-off that the woman who lived there, Michelle Hogg, had helped disguise the robbers. In her rubbish bin, they found latex masks that matched those used by the gang.
It started to build that picture for us. We now had somebody who was capable of making prosthetic masks. We now were starting to get the answers as to how the police officers had managed to face their victims without hiding their faces, but hiding their identity. And that was quite critical. And that was our real first breakthrough.
But who were the men behind the masks? Michelle Hogg wasn't telling. She said she had no idea the men were planning to commit a robbery, and she feared for her life if she revealed their names. But police were about to make another breakthrough that day. The gang had made a series of basic errors in the hours following the robbery. The first, they'd failed to get rid of the getaway vehicles properly.
People think of George Clooney in Ocean's 11 and a sort of a slick, sexy, caper. But this isn't that at all. This is really an Ealing comedy made up of a bunch of idiots and bruisers and chancers who are a bit hopeless, sometimes quite amusing, sometimes a bit frightening, and generally an entertaining mix of all those things.
One of the vehicles found by police was a van used to hold the Dixons.
The red van, we call it a red LDV van, which had been disguised as a parcel force van, had been sold through various auction sites and had then been registered to business premises linked to Stuart Royal. The Vauxhall Vectra, which had been fitted with the siren and the police lights, had also been purchased and registered in the same premises name, linked to Stuart Royal. So we had this very strong link very early on to Stuart Royal.
Stuart Royal, a local car dealer, was one of many names that had already been given to the inquiry team. The discovery of the vehicles made him a prime suspect.
Stuart Royal was a fat old middle-aged man with a belly and a bad back, and he couldn't see straight, and he couldn't even sell second-hand cars to make a living. The whole thing was rather comical, really.
We are trying not only to arrest the people involved, we're also trying to recover the money. So we have to carry out some inquiries to see who else do they link into. At this stage, we know this information, but they don't know. And we have to tread very, very carefully here, because if we move too quickly, we may alert, but if we move too slowly, we may move evidence. And these were some very critical decisions that were made at this time of the inquiry.
The decision was made not to arrest Royal immediately. Operation Deliver was building momentum. The day after the vehicles were discovered, police found 14 cages that had been used to move money during the robbery. They'd been dumped in a field near Maidstone. That same day, the discovery of yet another vehicle involved in the robbery put 2 other names in the frame.
At lunchtime in the car park of the Ashford International Hotel, this white Ford Transit van. It's been reported, but not as yet confirmed, that it contained stolen cash. These photographs said to show the police removing items, possibly that money, from the van.
Also within that vehicle was firearms, balaclavas and flapjackets. Really good opportunities for us in terms of forensic examination, so it's an important lead for us.
The gang had made their second basic error. They'd left behind vital evidence for the police.
The discovery of the van was huge. The reason for that is we had absolutely identifiable money from the depot, in excess of £1 million, which could clearly be identified as coming from the depot because it was still in its original wrappers. With that, we found body armour, a balaclava and a Scorpion machine pistol. Now, these were vitally important. A Scorpion machine pistol is a very identifiable weapon.
Our inquiries with the owner of that vehicle actually led us to the name Lee Rusher and an associate of his, Jetmir Butch Papa. So very, very quickly we were starting to get a lot of names coming forward, and with some corroborative information and evidence, which again showed us that we were on the right track.
Lee Rusher was a local roofer with previous convictions for violence. His friend, Jetmir Butch Papa, an Albanian immigrant. Both did casual work for car dealer Stuart Royal.
But this Kent gang were a pretty hopeless bunch of amateur misfits, knuckleheads, bruisers. I mean, these weren't serious. These weren't heavy-duty criminals. These guys hadn't got any great form. They were, you know, guys who had convictions for grievous bodily harm and thieving and getting drunk and, you know, speeding. I mean, they were all just hopeless and pretty thick, a lot of them.
It was time to start making arrests.
Police say the net is closing in, and it's been dramatic. This amateur video shows an armed raid in a quiet residential street in Tunbridge Wells.
Police raided the homes of Rusher and Butch Papa, but neither were there. However, at Rusher's house, detectives discovered plans of the depot and shotgun shells.
It was very exciting. We knew we were on the right track, and it gives you confidence when you're tired and you've been working 24 hours every day to try and solve this robbery. It gives you a boost.
Within 48 hours of the raids, Royal, Rusher and Butch Papa were all behind bars. Armed police had shot out the tyres of their cars.
We do not know and cannot know whether they still have firearms in their possession. We have to remember at all times that they've played for very high stakes here. £53 million, biggest cash robbery in UK history as far as I'm aware. These are very, very high stakes. They know that if they're caught and convicted, they will get a very long prison sentence. So our minds turn to what would they do to avoid capture, and therefore we have to consider the possibility that they have firearms.
The pace of the investigation was impressive. In less